So I wanted to let you guys know, I guess, what went on a little bit this week earlier. Last week on Sunday, of course, we finished up church. Um, we had those hamburgers, and then pretty much after people left, I came up here, I caught a nap because I knew I was going to need it. I had a 3+ hour drive. Um, and 3+ hours when you're in about 5 or 6 hours of sleep is not always the best combination. So, like I said, I just want to catch a quick nap, and I did. Came up here, caught my nap, finished up what I need to do as far as getting things onto YouTube and all, and then I just came downstairs, packed my bag. That's the great planner that I am, and then uh, kissed and hugged my family goodbye, and I left. And I went place that I've never been before and had to go through a place I never like going, which is Dallas. Um, but I went through Dallas and went to Lake Tawakoni, which, to be honest, I didn't even know how to pronounce it until like Tuesday. So um, there's a guy I know. Uh, he planted a church a few years back in Stephenville. You guys might know it. It's called Timber Ridge Church. His name's Nick Burleson. He and his wife started that up like um, 12 years ago or more. Uh, at any rate, uh, Nick is one of those guys. He's just a go-getter. He doesn't sit still for very long. He's highly driven, highly motivated, just charismatic personality. He's the kind of guy you look at, and at least in my mind, that people look at and they think, "Wow, that's a guy I can see starting up a church." Whereas me, if you get to know me, you're like, I really don't know how he managed that. But we did, and so at any rate, um, Nick's a pretty smart guy. When he started up the church, he figured in something. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the practice of sabbaticals, um, but it's more common, I think, in the church than it is anywhere else. But you kind of hear about it every once in a while, like in academia. But basically, the idea is that you take an extended break, and depending on the church you're at, that could be 2 weeks. That could be like a year, even if there's a big enough need. Uh, and Nick figured into when he started up Timber Ridge to doing a sabbatical every 5 years. So basically, made a deal with his wife. Is basically what came down to. It's like, we're going to run hard for 5 years. And we're going to take like 2 months off. And they did. And they ran hard for 5 years, and then they took 2 months off. They came back and they did it again. It's not say they didn't get vacations occasionally in the middle of that, but for the most part, you know, vacations. For most people, it usually takes 2 days of vacation to even start to relax, and then you start to unwind. And really, it takes about a week to 2 weeks, depending on the person, for you to really unwind and get to where you're honestly and truly relaxed. And that's when vacation is ideally supposed to start. This is why we did things like back in the 1800s and such. Why we took long vacations. It was also in part because it took a long time to get anywhere. But that's part of it. But it's why we call a honeymoon a honeymoon. The idea is that it's supposed to last like a month. And for some people, it's like a day, a weekend, week, maybe 2 weeks. And that's about as long a honeymoon as you see anymore. It's 2 weeks. And but my point is that what Nick landed on with um, those sabbaticals, what our culture used to understand is this rhythm of rest. And we don't get it anymore. We don't understand the idea of rest anymore. And so it really just felt like God was telling me, okay, it's time to really bring this in because I feel like I have had a better grasp on it than most people in our culture. But to say that I got it down is overstating things for sure. For the most part, I've been taking Saturdays off for the last few years. And so there's times that something we do for church happens on a Saturday. So I rearrange my Sabbath. But that's basically the idea. So every, one day out of six, I take a break and a rest. And that's something that we don't get. As Americans, we are all about going after it and plowing and digging deep and just, pour the time, the energy into our work. And there's a lot of good in that because I believe that God created us to do work. Matter of fact, if you look back in Genesis chapter 1, you see that God gave us work to do before we ever screwed things up. We were supposed to tend the garden. We were supposed to basically fill the earth and subdue it. And He gave us these tasks before sin was ever a nightmare for anyone, much less the nightmare it is today. And so work's a good thing. I don't want you to think that I'm coming off against work at all, because it is good. But the point is that God, from the beginning, set things up to where we needed rest. And more than most nations in the world, the United States doesn't get that. There's some others that are right on board with us. Japan has a reputation, China as well, to some extent. But for the most part, Europeans, they understand this idea, this rhythm of rest and relaxation and then coming back and getting to work. We just don't get it. We go 6 days a week, 7 days a week sometimes because, we got to work for at least 5 days. And then there's stuff that needs doing at home. I can remember one guy, very godly man I knew, was basically the short-term pastor while we were between pastors, had a church Tony and I used to go to several years ago. And before that point, he was our pastor. Um, he went through a phase where, for lack of a better term, not it's my words, not his. He went through a heathen phase where he wasn't going to church. So yes, that happens even to pastors. Um, But basically, what it was is that they were remodeling their home. They bought a home, needed a lot of work done, and they've done all the one-day projects. Everything can get done in one day, they were done with. So they had to move on to the bigger projects, so it was take 2 days. So they stopped going to church because Sundays were needed to do the renovations. And their pastor dropped in on them and said, "Hey, how are things going?" "Oh, fine, fine, fine." And he stopped. "Why aren't you guys coming to church these days?" And he said, "Oh, well, there's work needs doing at home." And that's not abnormal. We do that, but there's a problem with all work and no play because we weren't created for that. We weren't created to just keep going. We are not energizer bunnies. We are humans. We don't keep going and going and going. We've got to stop. We've got to plug in and relax. And so this is something we don't get. And the consequences of it is inevitable burnout. Burnout's a nasty thing. I've had a taste of it. Now, people I've known have had far worse cases than I have. But basically, it can look a lot like depression. It can be where you just don't have the energy to get out and do it. It's you don't care enough to step up and do the things that you need to do. You just don't have it. You find yourself short tempered all the time. You find yourself blowing up so easy, and it's just a problem. Like I said, our culture doesn't understand how to pause. All we know is fast forward. I mean, I like to listen to podcasts, and I know lots of people that do as well. And I know some people who they don't listen to a podcast if it's not on double speed. it's like I don't have time to listen to things in normal time. I've got to have things going at least at 1.5, if not 2.0 or 2.5, maybe 3.0. And there's some podcasts I listen to. I'm like, no, 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 I've got to take time. There's one guy. He's a native New Yorker, so he talks faster than we do here. And plus he's really really smart. And so I'm listening to him at less than one. I'm like point 0.8, point 0.9. But point is, that's how we live life. We live life at two speed, or we just hit the fast forward button. Heck, when we are fast forwarding, it's like if we're watching something and we're like, I've seen this part, I don't want to watch this part for whatever reason. You're like, fast forward. We don't even settle for like 2x on that. We're like, we got to get that thing up to 16x or something like that. We got to go fast through that part. We don't slow down. Even when we're watching a movie, which is supposed to be a relaxing activity, it's like, I got, and then, there's most of us, well, some of us anyway, when we're sitting down watching a TV show or a movie, it's like, I got a laptop going, I got a phone going, and I got like three screens that I need to have working all at the same time to keep me occupied. And it's not saying that you need to, turn off the other screens and sit down and watch a movie. But the point is that even so many of us, when we're relaxing, we don't relax. When we go on vacation, do you answer phone calls for it? Are you checking your email? Things like that. It's proof that we don't know how to stop anymore. We used to, back, 70 years ago, we had something called blue laws, um, which basically said that things shut down on Sunday. Now, while I'm not very big on having legal legislation that says that things have to stop on Sunday, I'm all for us putting that into our rhythm. Part of me always feels guilty going out to eat after church, whatever I do, because if I do that, somebody has to go to work. There's minimum one person has to go back, fix my food, and serve it to me. And usually it's more like, you know, 4 or 5 people in the restaurant. And that's just the way it is. And so part of me doesn't like that. But the whole point of this weekend, I call it weekend, it wasn't much of the weekend, it was Sunday evening through Wednesday morning. The whole point is that it was called Pastor's Retreat. And usually when you hear that, it's like, it's Pastor's Retreat, and we're going to learn about 8 strategies to grow the church. Or, it's like, here's 6 ways to plug into God, or here, whatever. There's something they want to teach you. And Nick was the guy who hosted this, and um, he basically just came down and said, okay, look, the drinks are in the cooler. We're going to keep that full for you. We're fixing food. You guys, tell us where things were. Uh, but he basically said, we, as in Nick and the other guys who were there, I guess, quote unquote, on staff, for lack of a better term, um, they were there to give us radical hospitality. Um, Before I got there, Nick's son was there hanging out with his dad, and he was just there to be with his dad. And but they've learned it so well that when Nick's son was walking on and saw one of the guys, Rick was running out. He's like, "Can I get your hanging out in the house?" How many people? When was the last time you saw somebody in your home with a drink running low and you asked them if they needed a refill? I don't do that. I'm just telling you. I'm like, they can get it themselves. I have capable people in my home. They don't need my help to get a drink. So that's what happened. But that's what he did. And Nick was just there telling us, there's no agenda. There's nothing you have to do. He said, tomorrow morning, we're going to get up early, and we got a couple of guide boats, and we're going to go out and we're going to go fishing. If you don't want to come, you don't have to come. You can sleep in. You can get up and do your thing, whatever you want to do. You're welcome to come. We would like you to come, but fishing ain't your thing, then don't do it. So guess what I did? I did not go fishing. And most of the guys did. Me and one other guy stayed behind. That guy slept in like 11 o'clock. I had the house to myself. I felt weird being in somebody else's house by myself and just relaxing. It felt weird. I'm not gonna lie. And then they came back and we just relaxed all afternoon. And then we ate dinner and then we relaxed in the evening. We stayed up talking. We talked about whatever we wanted to, whether it was just life or sports or church or whatever. And the next morning, they're like, hey, we got a pontoon boat. No guys, but we'll go out fishing again if somebody wants to go fishing. One guy wanted to go fishing. Took him out fishing. The rest of us just chilled back at the house. Super easy. I slept until 10 o'clock that. And it was just, that was the pace. That was the point, was just to relax. I just want to ask you, when was the last time that was the thing? Because again, that's something that God meant us to do. And I want to show that to you. So we're going to turn to the book of Exodus. It's so important that God made it part of the law, not just any part of the law, but part of the 10 Commandments. So Exodus chapter 20. Start up in verse 8. First. So Exodus 20, verse 8 says, remember to observe the Sabbath day by keeping it holy. You have 6 days each week for your ordinary work. But the seventh day is a Sabbath day of rest, dedicated to the Lord your God. On that day, no one in your household may do any work. This includes you, your sons and daughters. So no making your kids be slave labor. This and your male and female servants. So if you got servants, they got to take the day off too. Your livestock and any foreigners living among you. For in 6 days the Lord made the heavens, the earth, the sea, and everything in them. But on the seventh day, he rested. That is why the Lord blessed the Sabbath day and set it apart as holy. He set this precedent right there. He laid it down. This isn't just God asking us. This is right up there with thou shalt not commit murder. Okay? That's a big deal. Okay? Thou shalt have no other gods before me. Take a day off. Okay? He's serious about it. He really was. In Genesis chapter 1, when he created the world, he created it in 6 days. He spoke things into existence. Now, I don't know about you guys, but speaking is not a very strenuous task for me. I really don't think creation was a strenuous task for God. I don't think he needed rest. I don't. I don't think he needed that seventh day. I think he set that entirely in place to show us as an example to rest. I think it's that important. And we ignore it. Now, biblically speaking, Sabbath day was because the Jewish day went from sunset to sunset. Okay, it doesn't start at midnight like we think of it, or even at dawn. It was sunset to sunset. So from Friday evening, when the sun set, until Saturday evening, when the sun set, you weren't supposed to do work. That was the Sabbath. And I talked a little bit about before about how in Jesus' time the Pharisees took that and they ran with it. And they tried to make all these interpretations for what is work and what isn't. But I'm here to tell you guys, real work and what is work and what ain't work. There's guys out there, they're insane. They enjoy mowing the lawn. I don't do that. That's work, especially in Texas when it's 100 degrees out. I'm like pushing this thing around with all that noise. It's shaking the whole time. It just, it's not by definition of fun and relaxing. There's guys out there that do. I don't get it. I don't have to. That's their deal. If you're one of those people who you find mowing the lawn relaxing, you come to my house. No, but seriously, go ahead. Go for it. But the point is that we each know what we find relaxing, what we find work. And it is a little bit different for everyone. I landed on this as a subject yesterday. And so I actually made this little slide this morning. And you know what? Tanya almost always makes these things. All the graphic design stuff, she's better at it than I am. And she's probably already looked at it and said, "Oh, Ross, why did you use that one? Or why did you do this right?" And the reason is because I didn't want to ask her to do it because Saturday was early at rest. I had Sunday, Monday, Tuesday, and pretty much Wednesday as well as the day of rest this week. So, you know, I worked yesterday, and that was fine. I had my Sabbath. I had more than a Sabbath, actually. And so I wasn't going to ask Tanya to shove off her method of relaxation that puts this thing together. Well, not a big deal with me, but still, it's the basic idea. We're going to see, we're going to take a look, because this is not the only time we're going to spend on this. But this is basically what God has set up for us. It's important enough for it to give to us as a command, and it's for our benefit. Most of the laws are. This one, in my mind, should be obvious. So we just don't get those. Even when we're at home, typically, especially the stereotype is for mothers. Okay, mothers sitting at home doing nothing. They feel guilty for doing nothing. All right. Anyone struggle with that? Yeah, I'm seeing some nodding heads. And we're just like, no, I can't. I gotta go do the dishes. You know, I gotta pick up the bedroom. I gotta vacuum. I gotta clean the house. I gotta fix the door that's coming out the hinges. I gotta do something. Leaky faucet. There's 100 things that need to be doing. I can't just take one day and stop and do nothing because it's piling up anyway. And so if I don't try to do it, it's not going to get done. And plus, my boss wants me to come in and get some things done, and it just never ends. And you know what? That's exactly right. It never ends. So guess what? You can fill up 6 days with work, or you can fill up 7 days with work. But I'm here to tell you that if you fill up 7 days with work on a regular basis, if that's just your life and how you do things, you're going to burn out. And suddenly, work is going to become a lot more work. Things that were easy and simple and relaxing before are going to become work. You're just going to have nothing left in you. And suddenly, everyone else has to pick up the slack because burnout isn't something you take a 3-day weekend and you feel recovered from. For me, like I said, I had a relatively mild case of burnout, but it's still, it lasted. I couldn't tell you how long it lasted. It was like at least 6 months. You can ask Tanya. I followed her around like a puppy during those months. She was what I was plugging into most often. And so it took time for me to recover, and it was a slow recovery. I don't want that for you guys. I don't want anyone to experience burnout. So like I said, it's a lot worse than what I had. What I had was no fun. God's serious. He wants us to take the time to relax. He gave it to us as a command. He showed it to us when he created the world in 6 days and rested on the seventh. And recognize that our culture doesn't give a rip about Sabbath anymore. They don't care one bit. Your boss is going to keep calling you in on your day off. That just happens. People are going to call you needing something. So like, your mom calls you and says, "Hey, can you go water my hydrangeas for me?" or something. Um, there's always something to get done. And so people are always going to be pulling on you saying, "Hey, I need some help. Hey, I need some help." And to some extent, I mean, that's life. That's what we do. We step up. We help each other out. We help our boss. We pull those extra hours or whatever. But we've got to be able to learn to put some boundaries in place because our culture will not put those boundaries up for us. It used to, like I said, we used to have blue laws where gas stations were closed. If you needed gas, hey, you better fill up on Saturday. Or you're not going very far. If you wanted to eat out, well, that's tough luck. You better have brought a doggy bag home with you from the restaurant on Saturday. But it's not that way anymore. But you know what? We can build those rhythms into our life. We can put up those boundaries within courses. It's really interesting. I've never been, but I understand that in Israel, Friday at sundown until Saturday at sundown, things shut down completely. To the point where if you live in or for that matter, if you're staying in a hotel that's multi-story, they have an elevator for you to get up and down. That thing is going to drive you crazy. The taller the building, the worse it is because you know what they do? It's set where it's going to stop at every single floor, every single time. It goes up and down, stopping. If there's 10 floors, stops at floor one, opens up the door. No one walks in. It doesn't care. It just stays there. The whole purpose of it is that in their mindset is that pushing that button to go to the third floor that you're on is work. In their mind, that's work. So they'd rather have you just step on the elevator, just chill for a while, wait until your floor comes up, and then you get to walk out. You don't have, those buttons simply do not work. If you want to hurry, you better hurry up the stairs. It is. This is where I feel like that's getting into legalistic territory. It's like I don't care about pushing buttons. That ain't work to me. But the point is that they're taking a stand. Their culture cares about that, and so they're going to carve out time for everybody, and they're going to some extent, push that on everybody. Our culture doesn't. They don't care if you're working on Saturday or Sunday, and most businesses don't shut down on those things. There's some that still do, for sure. And I'm thinking about the mail service. Mail didn't used to run on Sundays. Bet you money. I know a man who's working for the post service today, right now, because they do now. Because our culture does not respect boundaries. You're going to have to set those up. You're going to have to decide what that looks like when that happens. And I recognize that for everybody, it's not going to be Saturday. It's not going to be Friday sundown until Saturday sundown. That's probably not going to happen. But you can figure out what it is. Maybe your Sabbath needs to be Monday. Maybe it's going to be Sunday. I don't know. But the point is that you've got to figure that out. You've got to figure out what it is that you can do, what you can't. And you're going to have to set up those boundaries. And you know who's going to push those boundaries the most? You are. You're going to be the one saying, "Oh, I forgot to do this. It really needs to be done. I've got to go do this." And the odds are that the word "need" you just used, it needs to be done, it's not exactly true. We're going to take a look. We're going to see some some precedent God set up, because in Exodus chapter 20, when he talks about taking the Sabbath, it's not the first time he talked about that. Look earlier in the book of Exodus, where sets it up. The point is that God is serious about it, and it's for our own good. Rhythm of rest is necessary. It's short. I kid you not. Modern science has figured out that putting in rest in anything you do extends your life units of better. So, like athletes, they learn to take a break because then their body needs to recover. If we work 7 days a week, we're going to live a shorter period of time than somebody who works 6 days a week. Because God wasn't joking when he said that this is how he created us. We'll get in further about the why, but it's just that important. It's one of the 10 commandments. If there's one thing that the world kind of understands, that this is the to-do list, or the don't-do list is more accurate. We get the 10 commandments. There's one thing they respect about Christianity, Judaism, it's basically those 10 commandments. Thou shalt not commit murder, thou shalt not do this, thou shalt not do that. Well, guess what? Thou shalt take a Sabbath. So, my encouragement, you figure it out. Put up the boundaries and stick to your guns. Eventually, people will learn to respect them. People will learn to say, oh, hey, I'm going to call Ross on Saturday, and I'm not going to answer.
There's a whole house that's what it was. I'm not going to say it's their one.
Yeah, exactly. We were never meant to do that. We've got to learn to say no. And we've got to learn to accept those no's when they're actually given to us. We hard to do graciously because we feel the need. And we might have to go hunt somewhere else for help. And that's great. So I just want to encourage you guys. Figure out a day of rest. Stop. Maybe even a point where you're fixing up all your food ahead of time. All you gotta do is throw it in the microwave and nuke it for 30 seconds. Okay, I can eat this now. You might want to go that extent. You might be one of those people who enjoys cooking. It's like that's a relaxing task. And by all means, invite me over for lunch that day. No. But figure it out and stick to your guns. That's what I want to encourage you guys to do. So give it a rest. Learn to hit pause. I promise your life will be better for it. Let's pray. Lord God, I come to you and I just got to admit, we don't rest. We don't rest well. And I'm just hoping that you teach us through this series, teach me through this series, how to do rest right. Because it's not a matter of legalism. It's a matter of plugging in and getting in charge. You told us to do it. You've told us to do it. You've told us to do it. You've shown us. Science is finally catching up and figuring it out that we need rest. So help us. Help us set that up and stick to it. We need it almost as much as we need you. So help us. In the name of Jesus, I pray.